Hello everybody. I'm going to read to you chapter 5 of my book, The Idiot's Guide to Magic. I've done the other 4 chapters already and they're already on my YouTube channel published. So you can start at number 1 and work your way through if you feel like it. Okay, so chapter 5 is called Going into the Unknown. When I was a little girl, I was intuitive. I saw things that were not there. I heard things that were not said, and I was persuaded by my rational mind and the rational opinions of my parents that these things were my imagination. The knowing and the openness that I was born with were suppressed as a result of my conditioning, my upbringing. We are encouraged in Western society to use our rational minds, and we're not taught how to use our intuition or imaginations as a tool. They are the most valuable tools in our creator's workshop. Imagine yourself as an artist having canvases and paints and a beautiful studio in which to work, but no paintbrushes. Where would you start? The intuition is defined as the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning. Once we head into the realms of conscious reasoning, what happens is we lose that first thing that we got. We lose our first impression and we begin to rationalize. The process of rationalization is based upon what we already know. It is based on assumptions we have about the way things work. In other words, it is based on prior knowledge from the past. Most of us on the planet live firmly hooked into the past. We only do that which we believe is possible. But getting real here, all of the great inventions which have changed the world and shaped our modern world were mostly thought to be impossible. What would my grandparents have thought if I told them that in 2018 we would be able to call each other on devices which were not even plugged into the wall, were run by microscopically small elements, and on which we could even see one another even if we were on opposite sides of the world? My grandparents would have thought I was batty. It's like something from Star Trek. When I was a child, I vividly remember Captain Kirk and his crew talking to each other via communicators on which they could see each other. I thought it was marvellous and totally out there, but not even a vague possibility. However, some people allowed themselves to go down this crazy path of using their intuition and imagination to create the very things that we now take for granted. What if I told you we all have that ability? What if I told you that the same ability that people use to create amazing advancements in the world can be used by us to create outcomes that we want in our own lives? Does that sound unlikely? Unfeasible? Improbable? Well, here's the thing. People all through the centuries have used intuition and imagination to create art, music, scientific achievements, household goods, electricity, even the wheel. This creative stream of consciousness is well known by creators of music, art, scientific advances, and so on, but it can also be used to create outcomes in your own life. But it involves going into the unknown. People that create the new are able to hang out in the unknown. When creating something new, you can't possibly know rationally how it's all going to pan out because it hasn't happened yet, and so there are no past references. But our ego or identity does not like to be in the unknown. It resists the unknown. It has to know how things work, how things are. It likes certainty. So what most of us do is base our decisions about what we want to do in our lives upon what we already know. So the decisions we make are based on prior knowledge, based on what we think is possible, based on the past. Entering the unknown for most people is a scary thing. It brings up all sorts of fears and insecurities, and most of us prefer the safety of the known, even if the known is not really to our liking. That's the crazy thing. We prefer the discomfort of what we are familiar with over the unknown, even if the promised end result is something we would dearly love to happen. If we don't know how we're going to achieve it, we can't take it. The unknown creates a tension in people that they don't know what to do with, so they avoid it. Most people play safe until a massive thing happens in their lives, which changes it forever. And if nothing like that happens, most people never change the way they live. Even people in abusive relationships choose to stay in them because it represents the known. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Even the ones who know how to enter the uncertainty of an act of creativity are often not aware that this ability can be used to create better relationships, better health, more satisfaction in every area of their life. And this is what magic is all about. It is about creating better outcomes, more of what you love. But to do it, you have to be able to enter the twilight zone of not needing to know. It all hinges on being able to hang in a space of not knowing how it will happen. And that is the space of being open to your intuition and in touch with your innate natural talents, gifts, and abilities. In other words, your higher self or your soul. As I have said before, the intuition is the quiet voice of the soul, and our thoughts and feelings are the noisy voice of the ego. So when we want to do something new, something we dream of, outside of our comfort zone, what's the first thing that happens? We feel fear, right? We're scared. Then we start to have thoughts that will further put us off pursuing the dream. We seek to stay safe. We don't want to feel the fear. Fear is feared. If possible, fear is avoided at all costs. I know there are occasions when fear serves us. In extreme situations where our physical existence may be threatened, fear serves a purpose. But when it is something like, should I or shouldn't I have singing lessons, fear does not serve at all. As a singer, I have met many people who have said to me, I would really like to be able to sing, but I'm afraid to. Learning to sing for many people is a scary thing, and they mostly let that fear stop them from doing something that could potentially enrich their lives and give them joy, connection, and fun. How many things do you want to do? How many dreams do you have? Just take a moment to think about them. List them if you like. Have you got things that you would like to do but put off for one reason or another? I think we all have things we put off, and there's always, but always, a valid reason. I don't have the time is always one of the main reasons. Another is I don't have enough money. I don't have enough talent. My husband, wife, parents wouldn't like it. I don't want to upset anyone. What will people think? The list is endless. Our ego looks outside at our circumstances to find reasons why we can't have what we would love based on beliefs. We can always come up with rational and seemingly very valid reasons why we can't have what we would love. In the West, we're not educated to believe we can create what we want. We're taught to tick the correct boxes, to remember facts and figures, to do something sensible with which we can earn a living. The person who does what they love for a living is envied by most people because they're doing what seems to be almost impossible and based on luck. Mostly when people are doing what they love, it is based on focus, putting in the hours and dedication to creating their end result. So, what has all this to do with intuition? Well, you can learn to use your intuition. You can learn to develop it. It is like a muscle which needs exercise in order to become strong. It is not rocket science. Whatever you use in your life becomes second nature after a while. I had no idea before learning to use my intuition that it was even possible to learn how to use it. Even though I had been intuitive as a child, I believed that you either were or were not intuitive, and I had been persuaded by my conditioning that I was not intuitive, and believed that things like that were in the realm of the hooky spooky and didn't really exist. I thought that some people were lucky enough to possess intuition and others were not, if indeed it was really real. I had heard of women's intuition, but didn't really know what that meant. In fact, in a male-dominated society like ours, women's intuition often seemed like a put-down, an expression of derision, like a joke. In a tricky situation, what do most people do? They weigh up the facts. Maybe they act hastily, impulsively, hang back, try and decide. Different people have different strategies. How many people say, hang on, I'm going to use my intuition to help me see what is true? Yet, that is what you can learn to do. Again, using singing as an analogy, people often say to me that they don't have a voice. They say they can't sing. I usually ask them how often they try to sing. The answer is often something like they tried once and it felt so bad and they made such an awful noise that they were told to shut up and they never tried again. I love it when people say that because I have my well-rehearsed response ready. I ask, how can you expect to sing when you never even try? I tell them that the larynx is a little muscle, just like any other muscle, and it improves with use. Just because you can walk, you wouldn't try to run a marathon without training. No one would expect to be a ballet dancer or a gymnast without training. So just because you can speak doesn't mean you can sing without training your larynx to perform its version of gymnastics inside of your throat. When you sing, you are getting your larynx to perform stretches it wouldn't ordinarily do when speaking. So of course it isn't supple. It isn't accustomed to having to stretch. And so singing, of course, feels uncomfortable and you assume that you have no voice, that you can't sing. The intuition is like our voice. It is hidden. We can't see it, and so we assume that if we don't naturally get things intuitively, then we don't have a very good intuition. But just like the voice, the more we use it, the better it becomes. But again, because it is hidden, the question arises, how do we do this? Just like training the voice or any other kind of training, what you can do is go to a teacher. That's what I did. Actually, when I signed up for the Magician's Way training in Australia back in 2007, I had no idea what I was signing up to learn about the power of magic and the intuition. William Whitecloud, the author of the book The Magician's Way, used to run a year-long training programs in Australia, which I signed up for in 2007, and I began my training in early 2008. I kind of knew intuition was involved because I had undertaken a weekend taster course, and I was so impressed by what I learned that I was desperate to learn more, but I had no idea that the content of the program would be as powerful and as life-changing as it was. I had seen the film The Secret and for a while had got all fired up about that. I thought I could have whatever I wanted just by thinking about it. All this ask and it shall be given stuff. But I was disillusioned because no matter how hard I thought about the stuff I wanted or asked for it, it just got further and further away from me. My main thing at that time was I wanted more money. We didn't have enough coming in to manage all our outgoings. Life was fairly tough, And when I saw The Secret, I began affirming like mad about the wealth of the universe being mine, yet I seemed to be getting less and less money coming in. It clearly wasn't working. At around that time, my second husband and I were not only having tough financial times, but also our relationship was not going so well either. One day, I was in our local second-hand bookshop browsing the books on self-help and metaphysics, and happened upon William's book. The first chapter described exactly what was happening in our life at that time. It made me chuckle and I wanted to read more. So I brought it home and showed it to my husband, and we both read it. We were impressed by its content and ended up going to the website, finding an introductory course, and the rest is history. Taking that plunge is something I will never ever regret, because it took me into the powerful world of using your intuition and imagination as tools for creativity. What I've come to realize as a result of trainings and further research is that basically the universe is made up of vibration and frequency. And to understand how to create, you have to understand about how vibration and frequency work. If we're talking about frequency, like attracts like, that is science. So even there's something you desire to create in your life, your job is to feel as good as if what you desire already exists in the physical world. Now, this takes a certain amount of will and a dose of faith to achieve. You have to feel the emotion of the state you desire and turn away from the negative emotions that go with the lack of it or your current reality. When people traditionally pray for something, it's usual for them to feel separate from what they want and sort of appeal to some greater force outside of themselves to please give them the thing they feel separate from. Please, God, let me have whatever it is, which never works. For a start, there's no greater being than your own higher self. We are divine creative beings. We are God. We are all part of the greater divinity, or whatever else you prefer to describe it. And if you feel separate from what you desire, you create an impassable chasm which will keep you separate from it. What if you don't know what you want? Now, the crux of the matter here is some people, actually a lot of people, don't know what they want to create. They have no idea what their purpose is. This is where the intuition comes into its own. You can use it to discover what's important to you and what your true purpose is. Training your intuition is something you can't really do from a book. I can give you some pointers, but without help, without someone who's been there and done it themselves, you run the risk of getting lost in the labyrinth of your beliefs. You could fool yourself into thinking that you have got it when you haven't. Either that, or you might think it just doesn't work. Using singing as an analogy again, you can't really train your voice by yourself. Yes, you can sing without help, as you can use your intuition without help. But you cannot train your voice to a high standard without expert guidance, without that other finely trained pair of ears listening to you and hearing what you're doing wrong. You see, when you sing, you just can't hear yourself the way someone else can. You're hearing your own voice in a distorted way from within your own head. When things are not going right with your voice, you may be able to feel something is wrong, but you can't hear it clearly. You also can't see what you're doing with your body while you're singing unless you look into a mirror, so that expert can tell you if you're tensing up the wrong muscles, if you're not opening your mouth enough, if your jaw looks too tense, if your shoulders are raised, and so on. So it is with using your intuition as a tool for creating what you want. It's good to have someone outside of yourself to be able to feed back to you where you're tripping up. It is our shadow side that trips us up. And it is hard for us to see our shadow side without a bit of help. In days of yore, the court jester was the only person that could give feedback to the king. In the guise of being a fool, the jester was in fact an extremely important person. Through the jester, the king could obtain valuable feedback to help him see clearly what his shadow side might be doing, to sabotage his results. In the same way, we need that objectivity from a trained person to help us negotiate the path of self-realization. In other words, we need someone to help us to pierce the veil of illusion in which we live. It all goes back to where we place our focus, and most of us place our focus unconsciously on what we don't want. So a trained intuitive coach can help you to see where your focus is going, because on your own it's not easy to readily see this. It's also an experiential thing, not something easily learned just by reading about it. So getting back to me and money and not attracting more of it into my life due to the whole secret thing not working and signing up for William's year-long training, I did the first training and loved it so much I went back for a second time, during which I became an accredited coach and facilitator. I have been involved ever since with this work, which is actually a lifelong journey of awakening to ourselves. What I call the work is also known as alchemy, and it's all about using the higher, your soul, over the lower, your identity or ego. Alchemy, as we traditionally know, is about turning lead into gold, but it's not about turning physical lead into gold. I guess that misconception comes from thinking that money and wealth is what we all need to be happy, and that the physical reality is all there is. If we could spin lead into gold, we could have everything our hearts desired, right? Well, this is true, but it's metaphorical and on a metaphysical level. We are turning the lead of our identity, of what we create unconsciously by focusing on what we don't want, into the gold of our soul, of our connection to the divine, of self-knowledge, which then brings us the untold wealth of joyfully expressing our true nature and purpose in the world. You see, misery comes from doing what we think we need to do in order to survive. Most people's lives are about survival. Not many people do what they really want to do, so they're disgruntled with that. And I'll say that again. Not many people do what they really want to do, so they're disgruntled. And with that comes a lowering of vibration, which is not conducive to feeling good or to creating dream lives. And they end up old and miserable. Most of the things that people do in their lives, they do for a reason. Mostly the reason is to earn a living, to survive. Frequently, the job is not something done because it brings joy. It is done to make ends meet, to pay the rent, to save up for old age. There are many people who are stuck in jobs they don't like, and not just people who do whatever types of jobs, but also highly paid professionals, such as doctors and lawyers, who don't like what they do, and despite all the money and security in the world, they are unhappy and depressed. The real secret is this. If you follow your heart and do what is true for you and what floats your boat, if you create something in your life not to get away from some negative consequence, but just because you want it to exist, you will find your life begins to change magically. The key phrase here is what is true. This is where the intuition is so important, because how do we know whether something is true for us or not just by thinking about it with our rational mind? We can't. It's our intuition which helps us to know whether something is true for us. It is the intuition which will help us to see what it is we love. It is the intuition which will help us to see where we are unconsciously focusing. We can't work it all out with our rational mind. The rational mind will bring in all the known elements from the past. It will be stuck in beliefs and assumptions about the way things work. It will carry out a risk assessment and then go, you know what? It's clearly not safe for me to do this because I feel fear. So I'd better leave it and go and do something else. So learn to check in with your heart. The fear, the tension of entering into the unknown is what stops us from taking bold steps. Don't forget what I mentioned earlier. We have all been wounded in relation to our true nature. We have all been hurt in relation to our truth. Therefore, we spend a large proportion of our lives trying to protect ourselves from any future hurt, and we tend to avoid our truth wherever possible, especially in modern society. The modern world is a world of immediate gratification. We're all looking for that feel-good factor. If something feels good, we think it's the right thing for us to do. If it feels tense or difficult, we avoid it and find some way of resolving the bad feelings we have. Drink, drugs, sex, shopping are some of the ways in which we make ourselves feel better, resolve the tension we feel, and are things we mostly enjoy doing. But the improvement we feel is always temporary, and we find ourselves being challenged over and over, and then again we want to resolve it. So when we go for our truth, what happens is it feels uncomfortable. Mostly because we're looking to go outside of our comfort zone. It's like we have a great idea, we start to go for it, and then it doesn't feel comfortable. We might start off by being inspired, but then we begin to feel tensions that we don't want to feel. A lot of people, me included, before training, think that following your heart is some kind of floating on cloud 9 experience. That if you're following your heart, it's all roses, roses all the way. That it should feel good. Surely following your heart should be the thing that brings you the most feel-good factor. Ultimately, of course, it does, but at the beginning, it can feel dangerous. Your ego is going, no, no, no. Your feelings are running rampant and your thoughts are just telling you to pull your head in, not be stupid, play safe and give it up. In the midst of all this mayhem, when it comes to following your truth, it is the intuition which will provide you with a compass. Generally, we set our course in life based upon the noisy voice of our thoughts and feelings, which are not real and do not present us with an accurate assessment of what is the truth in any situation. They just tell us about our beliefs, our perceptions, and may be heavily biased by our conditioning. The skill in this training is to learn to listen to the quiet, still voice of intuition, to lead the way to heaven on earth. That's why we're here, right? To create our heaven on earth, to have an experience of the divine whilst being in human form and able to simultaneously enjoy all the things of the flesh. Heaven on earth is when you are creating what you were born to create, when you're having fun expressing your gift, your unique gift, your genius in the world, sharing it with others, using it to serve others and yourself as a contribution to the world, expressing your divinity instead of living in fearful survival mode and doing what you think you need to do. Who's up for a slice of that? So here we are. With the help of intuition, we have discovered our true purpose, or something that we just really want to do. Perhaps we have engaged help from others who are trained in this work. We are charting our course and beginning to set sail on the sea of fulfillment, but there's still this tension which threatens to pull us backwards. The next vital ingredient to add into the mixture is will. By will, I don't mean willfulness or being stubborn. I mean sticking to something with discipline. You have to work at this stuff. You have to make it a part of your daily life, a practice, something that you engage with every day. There is no magic pill to take and suddenly you're there, magically creating the things you want in life. The magic happens through having the strength of character, not compromising, and being willing to stick at a daily practice. This daily practice has structure. It is a structure that will enable you to create new structures in your patterns of behavior. You see, the way you see life, respond to life, and the way you perceive life has a structure which has to be gradually replaced with a new structure. You have created your identity out of the beliefs you hold about yourself, and this is something that is neurologically hardwired into your nervous system. Your emotional responses based on your thoughts represent actual neurological pathways which you have developed and which release certain chemicals into your body which you are addicted to. These responses are ways in which you behave which you may not like. You see yourself doing certain things and you may be tough on yourself about it. You may think you should know better than to behave like that. And yet you find yourself over and over in life repeating the same patterns of behavior. It can be really frustrating, right? But be kind to yourself because it is just structural. It means nothing about you as a person. It means nothing about what you are actually capable of. We humans can give ourselves such a hard time about our behaviors. We make it mean something about ourselves, and what we make it mean about ourselves is always related to these beliefs we hold about ourselves, these beliefs which we made up about ourselves when we were wounded as a tiny child. This is the key. We made it up. Are you following this? We made it up. This is such a liberating concept to grasp. If you can grasp this concept with both hands and your heart and mind, you will be able to make up something else. I mean it. You can reinvent yourself, but the way you reinvent yourself is not by working on the beliefs. It's not by changing your beliefs. It's not about improving yourself. You see, there's nothing to improve because you're a divine creative being already. You are already created in the image of God, in the words of Christianity. If you work at changing your beliefs, all you're doing is adding more fuel to the fire. Our beliefs run our life, totally. I mean, really and truly run our life. Our beliefs are where you unconsciously focus, which means that you don't actually realize that that is where you are focusing. Nobody is immune to this. If we try to sort them out by working on them, we reinforce the power that they already unconsciously have over our life. I'm hoping I'm making sense here. So this is why people who go to shrinks generally end up going to their shrink forever, or if not forever, definitely long term. You cannot fix your beliefs. I'm not trying to put down psychologists and the like. I know there are many out there doing sterling work to help people, but what I am saying is that if you want to raise your consciousness from the mundane to the genius level, then you have to learn to refocus your consciousness consciously on what you do want rather than on what you don't want. It is certainly very important to uncover our sabotaging beliefs. It is imperative to bring the shadow side into the light, yes, but there is no need to try and fix them. Isn't that great? Just the act of uncovering them and acknowledge them takes the power out of them, enabling the ability to create what you would love despite the protestations of your ego. In the next chapter, I'm going to attempt to explain a bit more of the how-to. So if you've got this far and have managed to stick with me, do read on. And that's it. That's the end of chapter 5. And I hope you enjoy it. Lots of love from me.